This is Mr. Neil Armstrong, civilian astronaut, who may be destined to be the first man on the moon. As spacecraft commander of Apollo 11, the first manned lunar landing mission, astronaut Armstrong commands a distinguished place in history. What factors in his character and career have brought him to this place? He was born here, August 5th, 1930, on his grandparents' farm in northwest Ohio. Nearby is the small town of Wapakoneta, where he grew up. This was the Armstrong house. And this was Neil's room. Wapakoneta is the site of a Shawnee Indian village in the land of chiefs. Tecumseh, Cornstalk, Blackhoof, Brighthorn. Their moon was a golden mystery. Neil Armstrong went to high school here. During these early years, an almost innate desire to fly was developing in him. His love of soaring dates from those days of youthful exuberance, and it was to remain his main hobby as an adult. At the age of 19, he became a naval aviator. After 3 years and 78 missions over Korea, he was discharged and able to resume his formal education. He went to Purdue University in Indiana and earned a bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering. Later, he would supplement this with graduate studies at USC. Returning to Ohio, he joined NASA's Lewis Research Center in Cleveland. Then was transferred to NASA's Flight Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base in California as a civilian aeronautical research pilot. He piloted B-29s as drop aircraft. Also rocket planes like the X-1. And most of the advanced jet planes. He logged a total flying time of more than 4,000 hours. As project pilot of the X-15, he flew that aircraft to altitudes over 200,000 feet and at speeds of about 4,000 miles an hour. During those years, the space program was beginning to get off the ground. Armstrong, like most of us, was a fascinated observer. In 1960, he was made senior NASA pilot on the Air Force Dinosaur project to fly a winged rocket plane into near space, then glide back through the friction-heavy atmosphere in a controlled landing. But Dinosaur was not quite spaceflight. When President Kennedy laid the bold challenge before his countrymen in 1961 to land men on the moon before the end of the decade, and when the Gemini and Apollo programs were projected, Neil Armstrong knew he would have to become an astronaut. I realized, he said, I'd better get aboard. He was selected by NASA in September 1962 as one of the 9 men making up the second group of astronauts. the long months of specialized training for space missions began. In classrooms, observatories, field trips, Armstrong's particular assignment was to help develop training devices and simulators for both Gemini and Apollo. His years of flight research experience served him in good stead. He was backup command pilot for the Gemini 5 mission of astronauts Cooper and Conrad. In March 1966, it was time for his first mission in space, Gemini 8. Primary purpose of the mission was to rendezvous and dock with the Agena target vehicle. The Gemini 7-6 mission had proved that two manned spacecraft could rendezvous in space. If now Gemini 8 was successful in finding and docking with the unmanned Agena, the feasibility of an important part of the lunar mission profile would be confirmed. The 26-foot-long Agena target was launched without problems. As it completed its first orbit and passed over Cape Kennedy 90 minutes after launch, Gemini 8 also lifted off in a flawless launch. Command pilot Armstrong and his pilot, astronaut Dave Scott, agreed that this was jet flight plus. During their third revolution in orbital flight, the Gemini crew picked up the Agena on their radar. In another hour, they could actually see it, a pinpoint of light 76 miles ahead of them. At 4 miles, they could see Agena clearly, as Armstrong said, glowing in the sunlight like a fluorescent tube. Armstrong moved in slowly, making his final approach until he was about 3 feet from target. He held this position briefly, reading the status display panel on the Agena, then began to close the final few inches. Outside was silence. In the cockpit, the two men heard a slight thud. The contact was firm. History's first docking of two vehicles in space was done. For 30 minutes, Armstrong put the docked spacecraft through various maneuvers, checking out both Gemini and Agena propulsion systems. Then, ominously, the joined vehicles began to spin, slowly at first, then more rapidly. Concerned but calm as ice, Armstrong shut down the Agena systems and tried to stabilize the combined spacecraft using Gemini's regular attitude control system. There was some improvement, but it was short-lived. The tumbling and spinning started again, grew worse. Aware that the tumbling could cause the two craft to collide if its rate was too high at the instant of separation, Armstrong skillfully undocked the two vehicles without damage. But Gemini continued to spin, reaching a rate of 1 revolution per second, taking the crew to the very edge of their physiological tolerance. Any faster and redout would occur, with blood rushing to the astronauts' heads to cause complete disorientation. Coolly, Armstrong identified the source of the spin as a stuck 25-pound thruster on Gemini. By means of his re-entry control system, he managed to stabilize the craft. The mission had to re-enter and land prematurely, but its prime purpose had been accomplished. Also proved once again was the character of Neil Armstrong, calmly overcoming a threat more severe than any yet faced in spaceflight. The same character trait of cool competence in an emergency again saved Armstrong's life in May of 1968. In the course of checking out a research model of the lunar landing training vehicle, Armstrong ejected at less than 200 feet just before the vehicle careened and crashed. As the 1969 date for a manned lunar mission approached, Armstrong was named to be backup spacecraft commander of the Apollo 8 mission, which of course was the inspirational and historically significant first manned trip around the moon. In backing up astronauts Borman, Lovell, and Anders on Apollo 8, Commander Armstrong and lunar module pilot Aldrin of Apollo 11 were given a preview of the maneuvers and observations that they would experience up to the point that the lunar module separates to descend and land on the moon's surface. Astronaut Collins, as command module pilot on Apollo 11, would remain in lunar orbit. Man has been venturing into the unknown since the legendary voyages of prehistory. He has left home for many reasons: for sheer adventure, or for barter, booty, or new lands. He has risked jungles, seas, and deserts for exotic wealth, spices and silks, gold and gems. Spacecraft Commander Armstrong and his crew seek a somewhat different destiny. In the universal search for scientific truth, to be the first to reach the shores of another world in space. Echoing from the seas and mountains of the moon, will they find the chants and prayers of ancient tribes now mingled with the hopes of modern man? Will they find permafrost, water, life? Neil Armstrong has said, on the moon program, in almost every corner we look, we find ourselves way out at the margins of knowledge.